as I mentioned earlier, some fancy words in writing. How do we actually bring this to life, right? So the systems, all of our systems are bucketed into 3 areas: identify, develop, and engage. How many of you have a really good selection process? Nobody?
For inventory.
For what? For inventory, no, I mean people. People. Selection of people. How many of you struggle selecting the right people? Okay, a few of you. And why do you struggle? Is it because there's no talent out there? Is that what you're looking for? Or is it the actual process that you have in place?
I think from us, we're not, we need like, first we need to know what you're looking for. We need to identify what you're looking for. That's what we found.
Do you have a culture in place? Do you have?
We're working on all that.
You're working on all that, okay. Because we select people obviously based on this, right? That's why this is the hard part to master, okay? So our selection process, or in the identifying, we select people based on talent, all right? And I mentioned it earlier, talent first, experience second. So I cannot give you all the questions, right, for copyright reasons, but let me show you what let me explain to you what the process is. So number 1, we have identified what talents are necessary to fulfill this, okay? And we've partnered with industrial psychologists, okay? Because they are the experts in behaviors, all right? It's a 99% tool. It's not 100% because there are people out there that are masters at interviewing, all right? They give you exactly what you want, and after the probationary period, it comes out. So we look for work ethic. These are the talents that we look for. Work ethic, because this is an important one, because you might be the nicest person in the world, but if you have no ethics, then forget it. Not gonna work. We look for work ethic. We look for caring. Obviously, we measure caring because that's in our credo. That's the number 1 reason that drives relationship building. We look at how much people want to learn, because we are a learning organization and we want people to continuously want to learn. We measure empathy. Doesn't mean that we're not going to select someone that doesn't have any empathy, but we want to know how much training on empathy we need to provide them. We look for building relationships, because that's the business that we're in. We measure problem resolution. We want to know, are they willing to solve a problem? There's a lot of people out there that don't want to solve a problem, so we look at that. Those are some of the average, talents that we look for. Obviously, we look talents by position. So if it's in a leadership position, we look for, talent management. We look for building relationships as well. We look for execution, leadership. So we look at all those talents, and that's how we partner, right, with this other company that we have designed questions that are evidence-based to identify that they have the talents in here to fulfill this. So it's a multi-step approach. The first thing we do is yes, sir.
I was just going to ask you, is this, so it is an assessment?
It is. It's a multi-step approach, yes.
And so I presume that you're actively training the people that are doing the interviewing?
Absolutely. It takes a week to learn how to conduct an interview.
And, okay, good. I'm setting this up for some, okay.
Yeah, no, it takes a week, because it's a really cool training, because, you spend a week, 8 hours every single day. In the first 3 days, it teaches you how to, number 1, asking questions, that's not an easy job, let me tell you. That's not, unless you are an expert, it's not an easy job. What are the right questions to ask? How do you really empathize with people? How do you get the most out of that individual? That's a lot. And understanding talent, that's also a lot too. And then how do you populate a question? How do you post another question? And then what are you looking for to really vote? So the first step is a pre-screen. I don't know how many of you do a pre-screen, but it's an easy one just to assess, they apply. Let me check some of the information here. I cannot tell you all the questions, but I will tell you one. We ask, why do you want to work for Ritz-Carlton? There's a lot you can get from that. So we ask why, because somebody could say, well, I saw that there was an open position, so I wanted to apply for it. Okay, great. Or we have a lot of ladies and gentlemen that come in with this in their hands. You know, I have a friend that works in Ritz Carlton. He cannot shut up about the company, and he told me about the company, and I want to be part of this. That's talent right there, right? So that's two very different responses. So we want to know why. Because there's some people that come and say, you know, I'm looking for a paycheck, and it doesn't mean that we're not going to pass them on to the next step, but we write that information in there, right? Exactly why they want to work for us. Do they do their homework? Do they know what the company's about? That's one. The next part of the process is an assessment that's done online, all right? Then then there's a behavioral interview in person. For the past 30 years, it used to be in person, but we can't keep up. We have to separate that, all right? We have to separate that. We're very blessed that our brand has a great reputation. So we have to separate the assessment online to start screening out, all right? Because we're looking for what we like to call a top 1% of a service professional. So the assessment online, it's about an hour or so, 45 minutes to an hour, about 60-some questions, situational, the same talents that we're looking for in the in-person behavioral interview. And if I confuse you, let me know, okay? Because I teach people how to conduct the interviews. So I could talk about this for 5 days, but we don't have that luxury. So in the assessment, we measure the same talent that we're looking for. It's situational. As an example, if we are in the attention to detail is another talent that we look at. If it's a housekeeper, in the attention to detail assessment, in one of the questions, they will see a picture of a room, because that's where they're going to be working at. They click next. They'll see the same picture of the room, but they have to tell the system what 7 items were missing, but they cannot go back to the other one. It doesn't mean that we're not going to select a housekeeper because they didn't score high or got it right in that question, but a housekeeper in Ritz-Carlton has to remember 55 points in a room. So if they cannot remember 7, that means that we may hire someone that's not going to pay, there's going to be a mistake in the room. All right, that's just where the sort of like the analysis comes in. Yes, Fred?
Hate to keep asking the question.
No, please ask me.
But the one thing that I would speculate might be going through some of the minds in here,
Yes.
is that the Ritz has a lot of resources, people being number one, and assets or capital. How would you suggest that the small business owners in this room create define the talents that they need in each of the positions and then assess for that?
Well, let me tell you how we did it actually. Our process, we used to work with a company called Talent Plus, wonderful organization, very expensive organization. And what we did is that we learned what are the talents needed to fulfill this. And we work with experts to develop evidence-based questions to identify this. Now, yes, we do have the capital, but any interview, there's some that are for free online. Any interview is as good as the interviewer, right? So it means how prepared am I to do an interview and identify talent? Because I want to identify talent is not Joey, the cousin of a friend of the neighbor, right? It's about the talent that I'm interviewing, and I'm always looking at this. So let me, I'll do the explanation of the selection process, and let me see if I answer your question. Because we do the assessment, and then the behavioral interview, the same themes that we're looking for, right? Work ethic, learning, caring, attention to detail, problem solving. But we ask in that behavioral interview, so if we do the assessment, it comes back to us color coded, red, yellow, and red. Red, no. Yellow in the middle, and we don't look at yellows unless a VP of a VP of a VP approves it, okay? That only happens when we have a hotel in a remote island where we cannot, people don't live there. You gotta have visas that come in there and work. We only look at the greens, all right? Because from there we can have a top talent. So let's say we have a top talent, okay? Let's say that John is a candidate. I'm not gonna ask you any questions, John, so don't worry about this. let's say that John did very well with the assessment, and we're gonna interview him, but we're also going to interview Eric as well, right? But we're only looking for one, for the top 1%. So the behavioral interview is where I have to be a master of this, because those talents are based on the culture. So one of the talents that we measure is problem resolution. So we have a service value that talks about problem resolution. So if John is in the interview, I'm going to have this in my hand as an interviewer, the culture, and I'm gonna say, John, we are a very principle-centered organization. We are very culture-driven. In fact, John, this is our culture over at Carlton. You know, if we do give you a position, you're gonna get to learn a lot more. But John, I want to tell you that we have a service value that speaks about problem resolution. And actually the service value says, I own and immediately resolve guest problems. John, tell me about a time when you've had to take ownership of a situation, and then I populate the question. Our interview guide has a bunch of questions. All the interviewers do is that they select what questions they're gonna ask by the position they're hiring, right? And I'm going to do the same thing for Eric. And let's say that, Greg, you and I are both interviewers because we share interviews. So we have multiple interviewers, and when we are done, you and I are gonna talk about John and Eric. And I'm gonna say, Greg, what answer did they give you on problem resolution? Because this is what John told me, and this is what Eric told me. And then you and I are gonna code them together. I've already coded them. It's by numbers, all right? So, I mean, I already gave John a number, but then you tell me something, and they're like, you know what? He deserves this number. And then that's how we pick a top 1%. But we utilize the culture to do that, all right? You don't have to have a fancy process of a pre-screen, whatever it is that you have. Number one, that it's legal, okay? Let's start with that, all right? It's not like, hello, how are you? Okay, go. That it's legal, but that you're asking questions around your culture. It's really what we do, right? So we're doing the behavioral interview. In the behavioral interview, we are already in there. We have a space to check the 3 steps of service. And why the 3 steps of service in the behavioral interview? Let me ask you this. Why would we, at the behavioral interview, I haven't selected John or Eric yet, but I'm measuring the 3 steps of service. And there's no trick, you can go back and they're in your handouts. Why would I, as an interviewer, go back and measure the 3 steps of service on the candidate? Huh? But how? What are the 3 steps of service?
Morale and play well.
So we are measuring, this is how we measure the culture right from the beginning. We are measuring how they showed up, right? First impressions during the interview. What was the last impression they gave me as an interviewer? After that, we measure service value number 10. Why number 10? And we have a box in our interview to measure that as well, in our interview guide. Why number 10?
Appearance of behavior.
Appearance or behavior. I don't know what your standards are, but in Ritz-Carlton, if you show up for an interview, 2 things. You either show up properly dressed, because that shows that you are respecting the organization, or I used to work in South Beach, and people would come in their bathing suits with a Corona in their hands and their coolers. I mean, look, I'll join them at the beach with the Corona, but not for an interview. I mean, there are some people that would say, why not? It sounds like fun. No, it shows the respect that they have for the organization, right? So we start measuring that in the interview. And then we start asking them questions. I would also grab this and say, John, do you mind reading the first sentence of the credo? And then I populate the question. Because I want to know if he has done this, doesn't matter where he has worked before. And if it's an 18-year-old straight out of school, then at school, when did he have an opportunity to do this? So the questions are based on the culture. What exactly do we want to be known for? Did that sort of like answer the question, Greg?